All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still having this conversation on how to save SMEs and also the jobs losses that have been done, the economic stimulus package, how come it's not being felt on the ground. And joining me now is Reginald Kadzutu. He's the head of retail at Zamara. And also later on, Samuel Karanja will be joining us. He's the CEO, Importers and Small Scale Traders Association. But first, let's start with Reginald. Reginald, good morning. It's good to see you there. So these economic stimulus packages have been coming left, right, and center. But how come the impact is not being felt on the ground?
Good morning, Trevor. When you have a 9.9 trillion economy, such as the one for Kenya, then you spend 54 billion in the name of a stimulus package, which some of the companies are not even stimulus packages, is pretty much as trying to jumpstart a car with a AA battery. 53 billion is insignificant an amount to actually do anything to the economy right now, considering the size of the economy. So we will not feel 53 billion in the economy, and the way it has been broken down and the areas it's been given and the mechanism it has been used to, even in Nairobi itself, it will be very difficult to even feel a stimulus of 53 billion. I think that's where the major problem is not looking at the size of the economy and the sectors that have actually suffered in the economy where they will need stimulus. Stimulus needs to be targeted and not just throwing the kitchen sink at the problem.
When you say targeted, which sectors are you talking about that should have been targeted on this particular stimulus which we've seen?
So, for example, the economic problem that we are going through right now is twofold. There is the output side, because production has halted and output has gone down. Then there is the demand side in terms of generating enough demand to sustain production in the economic sector of manufacturing, for example. So if you have 35% of your economy driven by agriculture directly, then indirectly it affects your manufacturing sector, bringing it up close to 45 to 50%, which also indirectly affects your retail sector. So you have 54 to 55% of your GDP, which you need to focus at right now to try and grow it. I know they've done an e-voucher system for supplies for farming, but again, that is so insignificant because the problem that they have right now is not productivity. The problem that they have right now is logistics. How do we get our things to the different centers? How do we boost our exports? Because most of them is tea and on horticulture, which earn money from exports. Your manufacturing sector is more of portion mills, yeah? It's food processing. 90% of it is food processing. So if they are not getting supplies coming in directly from the agricultural sector, your maize, your sugar for making sugar and all those other things, then the output in the manufacturing sector will drop. Even if you give Kenyans money, the manufacturing sector will not have enough output to go. So that is one targeted area that stimulus should have actually gone to. Then when you look at the side of demand, giving people tax breaks, especially when you only have 2.8 million people in your in formal employment. In essence, those are the ones that actually you tax. And of those ones, only 79,000 earn over 100,000. The rest earn less than that amount. So you'll find your tax breaks are not actually going to infiltrate to the rest of the economy and create the demand that you want to create for the output, which is currently grinding to a halt. So if you're going to look at demand, I've mentioned it before, the government needs to come in and play the role of aggregate demand for the economy to save the output side of it. Because if the output grinds to less than 40%, 30% of capacity, getting it up again is going to be a serious, difficult problem. So if government plays an aggregate demand role, yeah, they buy the maize, they supply to the manufacturer, and they distribute it to the people, then you'll find they've sorted the demand side, and they've also made sure that the output and supply side is still functioning. But if you give a tax break to a person earning a lot of money guys don't spend. They become more of savers. And in such a situation where there's a lot of uncertainty, even the guy earning 50,000 or 40,000, when he gets an extra amount from reduction in PYE, he's not going to spend it because he's not sure where the next month is going to get paid. So most probably he's going to save that amount. And where do they save that amount? Most of all, they'll save it in a bank. or they'll save it in a fund manager. And what do the banks and fund managers do? In turn, they go buy government security, and that money actually ends up not doing what it's supposed to do, which is create aggregate demand in the economy.
Oh, interesting. Stay with me, Reginald. Samuel Karanja is now joining us. Samuel Karanja is the CEO, Importers and Small Scale Traders Association. He's also with us online. Sam, it's good to see you this morning. And these interventions that have been done by the government, have the small scale traders benefited in any way?
I agree with what my brother is saying. I don't think we have had any impact on what the government has done, because I think the government is ill advised in terms of the policies that they make, because they are not in touch exactly with what the small medium entrepreneurs go through on the ground. So they usually have what we call a very unrealistic kind of stimulus which they bring on the table. So when you look at what they have brought on the table, is it realistic, and how is it going to get to the small medium entrepreneurs? And what criteria do they use? Because when you look at exactly what they have placed on the table, I don't think it's going to have any impact in the small medium entrepreneurs based on what they have brought on the table.
So, Karanja, when you say unrealistic stimulus, what would you have rather have seen?
When you look at small medium entrepreneurs in terms of funding, I'm particular in terms of funding. When you look at the financial institutions, they are not guided well by policy on how, for example, a small medium entrepreneur will go into the bank or a SACCO and get a financial boost. And the government should also be able to give guidelines on the same. So when the government leaves it open, and I saw in the social media, I don't know whether that information is accurate, they talked about when I go to a financial institution and I'm not given a loan or I'm not given financial assistance, these people are going to be maybe penalized 2 million shillings. Under what law are you acting on? Because this is a private entity. So I think the policy should not be on paper. It should be very realistic. And I think the government, the people who are making policies, should include small, medium entrepreneurs in thinking through, and all the sectors basically, and especially financial sector, in thinking through the processes. Because most of the small, medium entrepreneurs are going to die in this season. They are not going to have any other lifeline. And so the ones which are showing, they are showing that they can be able to go through this season, they are supposed to be given all the help that is supposed to be there. Trevor, I want you to remember that 98% of all the businesses in Kenya fall under the small, medium entrepreneurs. So we are talking about only 2% which fall under the corporate. So the government should be very deliberate when it comes to financing, when it comes to policy making. My friend has talked about the tax breaks, who are being given the tax breaks, and how is it going to happen? Because most of the businesses we are talking about, SMEs, are not even registered under, they're not paying taxes, because government does not have their data. So how are we going to include them and as an incentive so that they can come forth and say, I'm making 50,000 shillings a month, I'm making 100,000 shillings a month, and I'm willing to subject myself under the government policies and to be helped. And so most of the businesses are actually doing that from their own, they are just surviving, and they are not, they don't have the confidence of the government of going out to KRA and telling them this amount of money I'm making. And so it beats the sense how KRA is going even to collect the turnover tax, because many businesses cannot go out there and say this is the amount I'm making, because they look at KRA as an institution that is there to put them down. But KRA should portray itself as a friendly institution with realistic policies, that even if I come forth and I have arrears and I was not able to pay those arrears in terms of even returns, we are negotiating as partners, but not pushing me down.
Okay. Let's bring in Reginald on this. And Reginald, one of the things that people thought would be a quick win is a 16% VAT that was reduced to 14%. But we're still seeing that prices of commodities, some of them are even going higher, and most of them are not reducing as was expected.
Yes, Trevor. On VAT, one thing that we need to understand, and my colleague has actually mentioned it, this is private enterprise. So you might reduce VAT, but you cannot force me to reduce my price unless you now try to arm twist and use competition authority to say, no, now you're profiteering. I mean business to make profit. I mean business to actually make a kill. And you cannot bring moral and ethics to business, because I created my business to make money. And most people are seeing that if this thing becomes prolonged and we reduce prices now, we may not have enough buffer. But one thing that the COVID has shown is that Kenya is an economy of people that live from hand to mouth on the individual level, and also hand to mouth on the corporate level. So people did not have enough buffers, and corporates did not have enough buffers to support themselves. So also VAT changes will also start trickling in as new stock starts coming in. Because if I have stock which I had already put input VAT and output VAT on it and priced it, I will not go to the shelf and change the price until I get new stock. So this may also be a sign that things are not moving that fast in the retail sector for us to start feeling the effect of the new 14% on VAT that has come down. And if you notice from last year, in terms of tax revenue the country has collected, PAYE was already on its way down. VAT was already on its way down, which was already a sign that demand in the economy was on its way down. And VAT was also coming down, also as a sign as businesses were not selling because it's consumption. There was not much consumption that is happening there. So people will actually not feel that. And maybe just to touch on something that my colleague has also mentioned, when you look at the SME sector and the element of they want to give funding to the SME sector, doing it through the commercial banking system is a loan to that SME. It is not a stimulus to that SME, because he's getting that at 8-9%, so it's not free. They've tried to put an implicit guarantee to try and force the banks to lend out, saying that we will cover any defaults, meaning that the government itself knows that there will be defaults going forward, because the conditions that have created the loan restructuring and the situation that we are currently in are not going to go away in 6 months and in 1 year. Instead, the government should have used ADC, Agricultural Finance Development Corporation, ICDC, Tourism Fund, to channel stimulus funds at maybe even 1% for 10, 15 years to these institutions, but not use the financial institutions. Because what they are now doing is creating a moral hazard where banks will lend out knowing that they're going to be guaranteed, and we know that the government is broke, they may not actually be able to guarantee fully, and we might end up now creating a financial crisis on top of the current crisis that we have.
All right. And Karanja, I'd like you to comment on that as well. This is point number 3 on the 53.7 billion 8-point economic stimulus package. And it's point number 3 where they're saying there'll be 3 billion shillings as seed capital for SMEs credit guarantee scheme. Isn't that a good thing for SMEs?
And how are they going to dispense the money? And that is the big issue. What channels are they going to use to dispense, that stimulus? And I think the government should be very realistic in terms of working with organized associations and working with organized groups which are vetted by the government, so that they can be able to dispense that money. As my colleague has said, once you subject like the stimulus, the money under the banking sector, it has to be subjected under the policies and laws of the banking sector and the financial sector, which is guarded heavily by the central bank. And so it's not actually a stimulus, because you have to pay with an interest. When you talk about a stimulus, you talk about you giving small medium entrepreneurs loans, or small medium entrepreneurs financial rest in terms of 10-15 years, that you can get your money and you pay in 10-15 years at a very low rate, so that you can be able now to stand up and work. But when you talk about subjecting the finances through the established banking sector, it has to be governed by the banking policies. So when you look at that, Trevor, we have to think through the small medium entrepreneurs policies which we are making and which the government is making, and the government also involving every person who is in the sector, because when you talk about some of the institutions which are talking on behalf of small medium entrepreneurs, they may have very huge numbers, and they may have even structures and systems, but are they coming on the ground? Because you remember we had a discussion some time back, and we said vitu kwa ground is different. So when you are making those policies, you have to know the vitu kwa ground, how different are they, And when we are coming to implement them, how are we going to do that? The other thing, Trevor, and I really don't leave this when we are having this conversation. When you talk about SME, I'm going to the point of talking to a Mama Mboga down there on the grassroots. So Mama Mboga, how is she going to be shielded when you're talking about even fintech, financial technology, whereby the mobile telephone companies, telecommunication companies that we are having can come up, even the government can come up with incentives through them, because we have M-Pesa and we have registered M-Pesa, and they know the track, they can track your financial transaction online and over your phone, and you can be able to work so much with some of these channels that are already there and inventions which are already there to assist the Mama Mboga on the ground and cushion them in terms of making it happen.
So Karanja, the other thing is, when the last time we spoke, you were at State House when you guys were discussing the issue of the importation. Are you saying that none of you were involved in this 8-point economic stimulus program that involves SMEs?
I think there are guys who are involved, but we were not involved, and we are we are out there. We have numbers. Though we may not have those big numbers, but we are clocking 100,000, and so we are significant when it comes to the market in terms of small medium entrepreneurs and being the voice of small medium entrepreneurs. I know it has been a challenge, talking about small medium entrepreneurs or advocating for small medium entrepreneurs, because we really have not been able for a long time having structures and systems in associations which have been mandated to have that advocacy. But the association that I represent in Porters and Small Medium Entrepreneurs, we have our success stories. We are able to negotiate with the government in terms of the containers which were supposed to be released to small medium entrepreneurs. But when it came to the stimulus, we were not involved, and we didn't even see people coming on the ground. We may not have been involved directly, but it is important even for the people who are involved to come on the ground, and we what we call public participation, which is an opening in the Kenyan Constitution, whereby before you come up with something like that, you have to involve the stakeholders. I didn't see any person coming to my shop in Nyamakima or to one of our members in Kirinyaga Road and asking them, what would you like the government to do for you? And because from there is when you get the accurate information. But you cannot sit on a boardroom and assume that this stimulus is going to work for the person in Kirinyaga Road. You have to hear his voice. You have to exactly see where they are and see what they are doing on their shops, so that they can tell you accurately even what they are doing. And we are so open enough even to show you even our sales records. This is what we are selling every day, because there's nothing to hide, because there are no businesses which are going on right now. And so when you're talking about public participation, we may not be on the table because there may be other institutions which they have maybe covenanted with the government to be giving them information. But we would also love them to come on the ground. Let's hear that there were government people who are taking stock in Luthuli. There are government people who are taking stock in Tomboya. There are government people who are in Gara. They were asking how our businesses are, but we have not heard, because we have a very tight link. When even KRA is coming on the ground, we know they are coming on the ground because we have our WhatsApp platforms. And when they come to my shop, I'm going to say, KRA has come to my shop. I hope they're coming to Luthuli this time. Please be prepared, give them the information that they need. And we have been doing that with KRA. And we have been telling our members on the ground, KRA is going to come on the ground, please assist them with any information that they need. And so in terms of that, the stimulus that the government gave, we were not involved, because we didn't hear any person, even from our network, giving their views.